That's a huge overview.
All right, good morning. It's 10:30, so let's get started. And then we can try to keep up our schedule because we have people online tuning in. And then, of course, we've got people here and some are coming in. Let me welcome you to San Francisco State for the OPC San Francisco Community Summit. I'm your host, Samir Verma, the professor here. This is our library, events room. A quick overview of the day. We've got, I'll do a little bit of an overview of the community here, the projects that we've got, some of the other things that are happening with OPC and Sugar, with introductions to people here. We'll then move on to some of the other sessions in the schedule that I'll pull up briefly. We'll break for lunch, and for lunch we have some options. There is a cafe right across. There's another cafe in the building next door. There is a mall with a massive food court, which is about 7-8 minute walk. There's another bunch of stores in the other direction. So we have different choices, and we've got a nice healthy break for lunch. So we can sort it out at that point. And then we go through sessions in the afternoon. We finish at 5, after which we are gathering at the Clyders. So if you're interested in that, we'll come around and check with you so that we know. In terms of other updates, Aaron's got the Eventbrite thing, so he'll come around and check with you so that we can check you off the list and get a roster of who's here. So with that, I'll start off with, on our schedule, the first session is an introduction, sort of an update. And people who are online, this is what I look like, so I'll turn off the camera now. We'll switch to the screen. Screen share, there we go. And we'll say,
There's a possibility you could face it the other way so you're not facing the light so that people can actually see your face.
oh no, I'm actually turning it off so they can't see my face at all. And I will share the screen so that we can actually pull up a few things here and they can see these things on there. Okay, so I'm sharing the screen, so the camera should be off, and basically this is what they will be seeing online as well. So for the summit, we've got a pretty full schedule, which is here. So I'll walk through this in a few minutes, and then we'll do some introductions. So let me do maybe a 5-minute thing on OPC SF itself. For those of you who are new, we have people who are local but new. We have people who are from other countries but new to us. So it always helps to sort of do that. So 2007. Well, no, I should go back to 2005 when I first heard about OPC. I signed up on one of those email lists. It wasn't at OPC. It was, in fact, I think, a Linux kernel list where they were talking about, well, one day we'll have this laptop and it will run Linux. And I followed a few conversations there, and then there was silence. And then in 2007, I went to a conference in Portland, and somebody had the green laptop. And of course, it draws a crowd, and so everybody's like, I want to take a picture with the laptop. And I got my picture too with the laptop. I was thrilled. This was June, I think, of 2007. And I asked the person who was holding it, oh, how do I get one? Just like everybody else does. And he said, oh, maybe write to them. So I did. I wrote to dev@laptop.org, and I said, I want to help out. And the next thing I know is I get this envelope in the mail with a laptop in there. And so that was the beginning of that relationship there. And so the laptop came in, and of course, it was the first thing you do is open it up, turn it on. It looks fancy. Then you go around and tell everybody in the office, look what I got. And so then that cascaded into, oh, maybe come to our class and tell us about what's happening. So I go, my classes, of course, I talked about it, other classes. And after doing a few presentations, it's interesting that, well, to sound sort of cogent and coherent in those sessions, I needed to know what this stuff was. So I have to do my homework. And in that process, I learned a lot about the project from a distance. And so that continued. OLPC has many email lists, as many of you know here. I've lost track. And so got onto those. And then by the end of 2007, the Give One, Get One program kicked in. And people were getting their laptops. We have 2 laptops from that program here today. So those are still around. And then January 2008 was the very first meeting we had here on campus in the building next door, where all of those people who got this Give One, Get One laptop came because we had all heard about the mythical mesh network, right? It's like there's this network that automatically happens, but you can't have a mesh network unless you have 2. And so everybody brought their laptop and kind of saw how this thing works. And that was the beginning. And so at that point, at the end of that meeting, I remember one of the people who was who brought his laptop said, "When do we meet again?" I'm like, "I don't know." They're like, "Oh, maybe we should meet every month." And so that's the accidental beginning of OLPCSF. We got an email list from SJ Klein, and we started to set up monthly meetings. So since then, we've met every month. Occasionally, we skip for, I would say, mostly logistical reasons, but for most part, we've had.
So how did those people find each other?
Which people?
That first meeting.
Well, the first meeting, it was through a lot of other lists because, there are some Linux lists, there are some other things here and there. There was no Twitter, or maybe it was, but we weren't using that for sure. And there was a lot of word of mouth. I was kind of surprised. I remember we had 22 laptops that showed up at that meeting, which was impressive. But anyway, so that's kind of where it started, and then it's gone from there. 2009 was the first year where we decided that because we meet every month, we sort of know what's happening with different projects, but maybe once a year we gather all the projects and we do like half a day session of presentations and who's doing what, and it would be a little concentrated. So that was the very first year we actually done the summit. 2009, we had about 35 people at our downtown location, and I distinctly remember halfway through the whole thing, we had to leave the building because of a fire alarm. So everybody had to leave whatever they had. I grabbed the camera, we sort of ran out of the building. And then from there onwards, it grew. So 2010 was a larger one because people like Adam said, "Hey, can we come and join this?" And so other people came in, and I think that year we had 140 people or so. We ran out of space. So it's been going on since then, and the attendance goes up, went up, and now we are now at somewhere about 40, 50 registered people. But more importantly, with a very different set of priorities and ideas, because the project matures, there's hardware, there's software, the nature of the problem in some locations changes. So throughout those years, the local projects that we've had, I've had projects in India, in Jamaica, Madagascar. Andy's got a project coming up in Ethiopia. We've got Harriet is here. She's got projects in India that I've worked on. Alex is here with the Madagascar projects. Hillary is here with Tanzania. So we've had a whole bunch of these projects, sort of small or mid-size, I would say. Also with many different kinds of issues. So it's not just the laptop, but social aspects and so on. So those have been going on. We've had projects that are on the periphery that I'll talk about in a couple of minutes. And then for myself here on campus, we've had some projects where students have been able to contribute to some of that stuff, either by testing or creating something new. One of my students is here in the back, Ritu, who's working with Nepal on some of their activities. So still going on after all these years. And this is the 8th summit that we have. In terms of these projects, especially for people who are listening in, because I think most of us here are pretty well versed with where things are. But OLPC itself, if I were to look at this as a two-part thing, OLPC itself has evolved, matured. The devices have changed. The most common thing that I hear online is people will be like, "Are these still around?" And interestingly, well, yes, they're still around, but interestingly, I think their perception comes from the fact that the laptop still looks the same, even though it has gone through 4 revisions, right? Or 1 original and 3 revisions. So a lot of people do not know that. So there's that. And then there are other devices that OLPC has introduced, like an Android tablet, and there's a new laptop I've heard, I haven't seen. It's called the NO3. Okay.
And the Sugar laptop.
Do we have one of those here?
I'm
Anybody
trying to
have?
get two to be sent to me.
Okay,
we
but
don't
does
have-
anybody have that here at the meeting? Okay, so I haven't seen that, but evidently that's another device there. And of course, there are a whole bunch of other devices that are non-OLPC, but they are in the market available for various price points and quality and so on. So that space is growing, but not specifically just with OLPC. So some conversations I think are relevant in that space. With SugarLabs, we have what, 1, 2, 3 members of the oversight board here.
Almost enough for a meeting, right?
Almost enough for a meeting. So that has been an interesting space. Sugar is, I think, fairly mature as a software platform. There are a lot of things that are changing with respect to the underlying operating system. So every time there's a new build of, say, Fedora or Ubuntu or something, there are a lot of other issues that come in. But Sugar itself, in terms of a framework, is fairly stable. And the architecture around the activities, the human-computer interaction stuff with the user interface and the user experience part are fairly stable. So now in many ways, the challenge is, well, what do people do with Sugar? There is the maintenance aspect. Anybody who's running a project would know that has to happen all the time. Of maintaining what's already there. And then there is the other side, which is what else can we do with it? And well, I don't want to wear my official hat here of the oversight board because I'm kind of expressing my own opinion here. But I think, I can see there is definitely what I would call classic Sugar, that ecosystem with Python and the way it was built and its maintenance and new things there. There is the, well, can Sugar live outside the OLPC XO? So there is the Sugarizer project, which we'll have here in a bit, that Lionel is working on. And then there is also just, for instance, a very specific focus on total blocks that Walter is doing with building a lot of things in that space, again, with technologies like JavaScript and all that. So I think that's, again, another rich space to figure out what works, what does not work, and in what environmental scenario with Sugarizer and things like that. And then in terms of the ecosystem itself, this conversation came up on, in fact, one of the SugarLabs lists, which is what part of this is Sugar and what part of this is not Sugar. And that's a lens, it's where it's a binary thing where there is a hard line and we say this is Sugar and this is not Sugar. But in reality, that line is actually quite blurry because, for instance, the school server, is that Sugar or not? And I've heard opinions on both sides. Any of the things that come as support, but not directly Sugar. So there is almost like an ecosystem around all of these things that are very much part of the whole thing, but perhaps not specifically OLPC or specifically Sugar, but have to be addressed. And I would say all these offline server projects that we have, Internet in a Box or HPI or XSCE and all of those things fall in that category. And that's a very significant part of this whole system. I wrote a paper recently, got presented 2 weeks ago at an IEEE conference, looking at some of these infrastructure issues. And one of the big things in this paper was the offline thing, where internet access is usually treated on a policy basis. It is treated as a yes, no. You have internet access or you don't have internet access, right? You'll hear people say 40% of the world is online, 60% is not, something like that. But again, that's not a binary variable, as in there are places that have internet access, but it's not really usable to the extent that we want. So, that space gets really filled quite nicely with offline services where you may have just enough to perhaps do maintenance, perhaps do a few things here and there, but you can then use the offline services to fill that gap. And so that's another significant area. So in deciding what we wanted to do at this summit, those were the themes that came up, which is OLPC with its hardware, what is becoming end of line and what is coming down the pipeline. Sugar with its sort of a new direction with Sugarizer, which is HTML5, JavaScript, browser, Android, and so on, while maintaining the compatibility with the original Sugar. And then the third space is this ecosystem with offline services. So with that in mind, we decided to sort of design or at least invite people to talk about these things. And of course, keeping in mind that eventually there is a social aspect to the whole thing. And so education and healthcare and all those things fit in there. So in our schedule, you'll kind of see that. At 11:45 today, we've got Lionel talking about Sugarizer. And he sort of hinted, he said there is something happening where Sugarizer plus Android, could that be the next XO? We don't know, we'll find out, he'll tell us. Then we have a data analysis and visualization session in the afternoon that Andy will be running. Andy and I and Martin Brewhouse and a few others have been working on this ExoViz project to do visualization and kind of see if you extract data from some of these projects from the journal, what can you glean from it? And Andy does this for a living, so I have that confidence that, if I don't know what I'm talking about, he does. So that's pretty exciting. We'll take a look at that. We have a session on an introduction to Endless, which is interesting. Anybody from Endless here as yet? No. Well, they do have a session today, so in the afternoon, right? Yeah. Endless is a company here in San Francisco. I would say the interesting connection is that some of the sugar developers have been developing for Endless, and there is sort of a cross connection a little bit there. And they're a different platform, but with similar ideas of going to places with offline access and connectivity. And I've had some conversations with them. Not specifically in this space, but somewhat related, to kind of see, what part of sugar can live on their platform and what can we get from their platform to perhaps, add to sugar. So we'll see. I'm very interested in hearing from them because they've had their own challenges in building their system. And I think the first person from our system or our world who went to Endless was Daniel Drake, because I first heard about Endless from him. And then there are a few other people who worked with them. Then we have a session on Sugar Font Editor. And with this session, I think our expectation is, of course, we get to hear about how they went about building the font editor, but more importantly, the challenges of taking something that either exists in another system or is an idea, and how do you actually go about implementing that as a sugar activity? Because that's something significant, I think, for us here. We get a lot of requests from people who say, oh, I work with JavaScript for a living. How can I help? And so there needs to be some kind of a workflow where we can say, okay, well, you can put your skills to help us build activities or port activities, what that may be. So my interest and our interest is to kind of see what their experience was with building this editor. Tomorrow we've got, in the morning, we've got Jennifer Martino and Nick Doran. We have 2 sessions, similar themes. And here the idea is to kind of go into communities and see what happens with this technology. So not directly OLPC or sugar, but once you have these things there, how it influences those communities, how children can get interested in things like coding, working with maps and so on. So that will be tomorrow. And I know that both of them have got very interesting stories to tell us. Then we have a session about the experience of larger projects, because all the ones that I've worked on are tiny in comparison. And we have a team from Nicaragua and Dominican Republic, so they have this massive experience of lots of laptops, ongoing, issues, and I've had some conversations about, things that we can work on with data visualization and so on. So we'll hear from them. And then we have OLPC on the maker mindset with school servers, XSCE, the XSCE project working on Raspberry Pi. So that's a all very specific hands-on session, and Tony's going to talk about, you're going to run that on a XO 1.75.
Well, I wanted to show some things, but we have to
Okay.
figure out how we can connect it up to the monitor. I don't
Okay,
know.
I have the connectors for you, so USB, BGA, and all that. So so that'll be all server related, and then we have a session, Kids and Computers in Oaxaca, and Unleash Kids, and that happens in the afternoon tomorrow, basically looking at the experiences in these communities. And I find it interesting that I think in the last 2-3 years, we found that we've definitely crossed over that boundary of what used to be considered just OLPC and just sugar, right? Into not only looking at other software platforms, other hardware or services and so on, but also sort of going out into those spaces where this infrastructure can be used for not just education, but healthcare and awareness and all of those other things that are that come with access to information. So the full packed schedule. I will, let's see, it's 10:53, so I will stop here, at least in terms of my overview of things. And since we are a small enough group here, maybe we can go around and do introductions. I'll switch the camera, so I'll turn it around and you can introduce yourselves. Let's see if I can figure this out.
And as we introduce ourselves, is this published for eternity on YouTube out of curiosity?
Only the NSA will know.
So let's see.
The other one, no.
Let's turn this around.
Vladimir Putin will be looking over.
No, I already called Vladimir and the NSA. I sent them a copy beforehand.
So yes, this will be.
Yeah, this is a Hangout on Air, so this is on YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's on. So maybe we'll begin with Tony. So introduce yourself, tell us what you're working on, and then we'll go around.
Okay, so I'm Tony Anderson. I got started about the same time Vermeer did, about much the same way to give one, get one. And I've been very much interested in answering the question, what do the kids do after they get the laptops? And it's now something 8 years later, and I have no idea. So I'm still looking. But I've been supporting and get involved heavily with several deployments, mostly in Africa, but now also in the Philippines and so on.
My name is Herman. I'm from Nicaragua, and I was working on Somalia in 2010. Now I'm working with the Dominican Republic in the deployment of worldwide into Brazil.
I'm Reyes. I am from the Dominican Republic. I work at Platic, social responsibility department. We have 1 year for the programs.
So 1 year?
1 year.
Okay.
Okay, so hello again. My name is Safana. I work at Samaritana Foundation in Nicaragua. There's a project. It's a project that started in 2009. And so I started coordinating the volunteers program there. But now I'm also coordinating some projects of the incubation center that is quite new in the organization. So I'm gonna present to you the projects that we're working on.
Thank you. Let's go to the other side.
Adam, I was an employee of One Laptop per Child for almost 5 years, and that was more than 4 years ago.
We'll forgive you for that.
Yeah.
He's done his penance.
And so largely due to some people sitting behind me, I think almost everyone, especially him, I ended up involved with the school server project about 4 years ago. We were in Madagascar. Feels
Oh,
like-
that.
Yeah. So anyway, so things changed a lot starting 4 years ago. And And that's exciting because what was a very hard to use thing is becoming much more tangible to random rural clinics around the world.
Jerry Vano, working with the School Server Project, have been involved with that since Langhoff was running their show. XSO4 and stuck around after that. Went on to do the Australian deployment up until 2013.
Okay.
Andy, I got hooked through Adam. I sent an email to health@laptop.org, I think. Adam responded, I'm gonna be in Munich in a week, let's meet. And then we met in our lunch break and Adam handed me an XO and then ever since. Exactly. Yeah, now we're starting a project in Ethiopia. We got permission to import 100 laptops and we're ordering them through OLPC. It's an involved process.
Which one?
Exoforce. So they're currently deciding whether or not to go with the new OLPC laptops. I just sent Diriana the money for getting 2 sent to myself so that we can test them out and see how they perform, and then decide whether or not we're gonna go with Exoforce or these new OLPC laptops, which have the specs of like a Chromebook and better Chromebook basically, and are cheaper than the Exoforce. So we'll see. Yeah.
But you already sent the money?
For the 2.
Oh, the
Yeah.
2, okay.
Yeah.
So
No,
how much
no.
are they asking?
Hmm?
How much are they asking?
For the Exoforce, 240. For the OLPC laptops, 221.
The newer one
The
model
newer model with like more RAM, higher speeds,
and faster processor.
without the sunlight readable screen and no touch screens.
Okay, so, we'll talk more about that. Let's move on because we have other people. Harry, do you want to do a quick intro since you?
Yes, Harriet Vidyasagar, been involved with the project pretty much from day one in India. When Professor Negroponte came, we have a small village project, which is still being sustained by volunteers. And we have about 500 laptops somewhere in India, but we have track of about 250. Rafiq, who must be listening in, is a student who's looking at using chats for learning, and I have some videos and audios of his, which I would love to share. I haven't given up hope, strangely, because I think if we can crack it in India, we have somewhere to go.
Okay, great. George?
I was recruited by Adam because I had volunteered, or I wanted a laptop, a good one, get one, and I got one, and it was so poor, I said, maybe I could help. And of course, that was very much hubris on my part, because it's much more complicated than that. But it's what's keeping, in my retirement, I have nothing to do, and I have no way to contribute except through OLPC. So I have continued to be involved, and at one point I said, well, maybe the school server needs a little care and attention. And it's turned out that the school server is really the only technical thing that's left for me. And it still seems like a challenge to make something that just works. And there's a team of 3 or 4 programmers, Joe's one of them, that we're kind of working more or less full time. And it's a bigger job than we are, but we're still working on it.
Thank you.
I'm Alex Kleider. I was one of the people that heard about Samir's group and joined in probably 2 or 3 years after it started. And my wife June, who's going to host this evening, is interested in laptops in Madagascar, and I've been trying to help a little bit anywhere I can.
Thank you.
So my name is Jesus. I'm working with Professor on OLPC Nepal. I'm making a game for them right now.
Thank you.
Good job.
Yeah.
yeah, they're looking to do a lot of stuff in JavaScript. So yes.
Hi, my name's Maureen Speranza, and Santa brought these 2 laptops that I have to my kids in 2007, and I always wanted to learn more about them. I have been a music teacher in the public schools for many years, and right now I'm on a disability retirement, so I have time also to do a little hobby.
You'll find lots of stuff here.
I'm Hillary Nader. Right now, Maureen's laptop's starting out, so she needs some collective wisdom. I'm on the planning team for this summit, and I've been with the group since 2008. I was captured by a session with Bruce Backey on deployment in a village in Senegal when the internet was 5 kilometers away. The customs officers confiscated all equipment, and I was just totally fascinated by that, and so that's what got me involved. And then I got connected with an NGO in Berkeley that was supporting a school in northwestern Tanzania that wanted a computer lab, and so I got involved in helping with that, as well as helping with the program in these summits.
Thank you.
I'm Aaron. I'm a volunteer with OPCSF. I was a student in university in 2007 when the Get One Get One were offered, and so got that and was like pretty excited that it was all based on open source software, and that there was you can actually edit the code that you are running on the machine. So students not only could like use these activities, but they could actually like see the source behind that. And so that was really compelling for me, because that's like kind of what got me into computer science. And then a few years went by, I graduated and moved out to the Bay Area and was looking for communities to get involved in, and found the whole PCSF group. And so I've been here helping out ever since.
Great. Thank you. We have a couple of people who just came by. So we're doing introductions. So if you can introduce yourselves, and you're live on YouTube.
All right.
So.
So my name is Cosimo. I have been involved with free software for about a decade now, mostly with the GNOME project. And I now work here in San Francisco for a company called Endless, which is making an operating system for the developing world that has some good similarities, I think, to Sugar and to the mission of what we see as well. So I'm going to be talking about that later in the afternoon today. Yeah, I'm very new to this community. It's good to be here.
Great, awesome, thank you.
Hi, my name is Edilia. I'm actually here with Cosimo today. I'm his wife. So in general, I'm a newcomer to the free and open source software in general. I started getting involved with the GNOME Foundation in the engagement team earlier this year.
Okay, great, awesome. Thanks for coming. Okay, so we have introductions. We've talked about what this event is about. I'm going to turn this thing around. And I think for the people online, we'll say goodbye for now. We'll catch up again when Lionel starts presenting. So I'll stop the broadcast.